Welcome back to the channel World Coins Master everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating and mind-blowing stories in the world of coin collecting, the story of the 1946 1-cent wheat penny from the United States, a coin that, while originally minted with a face value of just 1 cent, has been associated with tales of staggering worth, reaching an unbelievable $620 million because of rare errors, minting anomalies, and unique possibilities that make it one of the most legendary coins in numismatic history. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that was once simply used for everyday purchases of bubblegum or a loaf of bread and realizing that, because of its imperfections and the way it was struck or preserved, it has become one of the most valuable objects on the planet. That is the journey we are about to explore in great depth together. The 1946 1-cent wheat penny carries with it not only the legacy of Abraham Lincoln's image on the obverse but also the history of post-war America, when the nation was shifting away from the turmoil of World War II into a period of rebuilding and optimism. The wheat reverse design, which had been in place since 1909, continued to symbolize prosperity and growth, but few people in that era could have ever imagined that certain coins struck in 1946 would one day capture the imagination of collectors, historians, and treasure hunters around the world. The ordinary became extraordinary, and the humble cent became a symbol of rarity, error, and immense financial value. To understand why the 1946 wheat penny is sometimes spoken about in terms of a worth as high as $620 million, we need to peel back the layers of what makes a coin valuable in the first place. Collectors look at several key aspects: the rarity of the coin, the condition or grade it has been preserved in, the mint mark variations that might make one version scarcer than another, and of course, the minting errors and die anomalies that can transform an everyday coin into a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. In the case of the 1946 cent, a combination of historical context, unexpected production quirks, and possibilities of experimental strikes has created a mythology around this particular year that has elevated it beyond almost any other Lincoln wheat penny. And now let's take a deep look at the year 1946 itself. The United States Mint had just come out of producing coins during wartime, when copper was so critical to the war effort that in 1943 the Lincoln cent had famously been struck in steel coated with zinc instead of copper. By 1944, however, copper had returned to coinage, and by 1946, the mint was back to using the standard bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. But transitions like these often led to mistakes, and it's those mistakes that collectors dream about finding. Imagine if a leftover steel planchette from 1943 had accidentally found its way into the coin presses in 1946. That would create a hybrid rarity, a coin struck in the wrong metal at the wrong time, and something like that could command astronomical prices in the marketplace. Such a possibility contributes to the legendary valuation of the 1946 cent. Adding to the intrigue are the mint mark variations. The 1946 Lincoln cent was produced at 3 different mint facilities: Philadelphia, which produced coins without a mint mark, Denver with its D mint mark, and San Francisco with the S mint mark. Each facility had its own unique production quirks, and errors from each mint can have vastly different levels of rarity. A double die error from Philadelphia, for example, could be valued very differently from a repunched mint mark from Denver. Some of the most extraordinary stories about coin values come from extremely rare double die varieties, where the details of the coin appear duplicated because of a die alignment mistake. If such a double die exists for the 1946 cent, and some collectors believe they do, it could explain why this coin has reached mythical valuations. Consider also the condition of these coins. The grading system used by collectors ranges from poor, where the coin is barely recognizable, to mint state, where the coin shows no signs of wear and retains its original luster as if it had just left the minting press. A 1946 penny in mint state 67 or 68 condition, certified by a top grading service, could already command thousands of dollars, even without any major errors. But imagine a 1946 cent that combines pristine mint state condition with a dramatic minting anomaly. That combination of perfection and imperfection is what drives the valuations into the millions, and in extreme cases, has fueled the tales of hundreds of millions of dollars. The possibilities do not end there. Sometimes, transitional errors occur when the mint experiments with compositions or planchets from other denominations. For example, imagine if a 1946 wheat cent had been struck accidentally on a silver dime planchette or even on a foreign coin blank, which was not unheard of during times when the mint was producing coinage for other countries. Such a coin would be incredibly unique, essentially one of a kind, and in the eyes of collectors and investors, that uniqueness translates into limitless value. The notion of a 1946 penny struck in silver or on a planchet intended for another denomination is one of the driving forces behind the extraordinary price stories associated with this coin. Collectors also consider historical provenance. If a particular coin can be traced back through a famous collection or if it has a storied history of being showcased in major auctions, its value is elevated even further. The 1946 cent, when tied to legendary collections or discovered in unexpected hoards, becomes part of a narrative that collectors love. Imagine the excitement of uncovering a 1946-era cent in a roll of wheat pennies tucked away in a family attic for decades. The romance of discovery feeds into the mythology, and that mythology drives the numbers we hear today, like $620 million. We also need to talk about the psychology of collecting and investing in rare coins. When an object is unique, or when there are only a handful of known examples in existence, wealthy collectors and investors are willing to pay almost any price to own it. It becomes less about the intrinsic value of the coin itself and more about the exclusivity and the bragging rights of owning the rarest of the rare. A 1946 penny with an error that no one else has becomes a trophy, a centerpiece of a collection that is priceless to the individual who acquires it. In such a scenario, even astronomical values begin to make sense, because the market for ultra-rarities is not driven by logic alone but by passion, desire, and competition. Now let us imagine some of the specific types of errors and anomalies that might exist for the 1946 wheat penny. A double die obverse, where Abraham Lincoln's profile shows doubled features, could fetch immense prices. A dramatic off-center strike, where part of the design is missing because the blank was not properly aligned under the die, could also command a premium. A broad strike error, where the collar failed to contain the coin during striking, could result in a penny that is larger than normal and highly unusual. And let's not forget clip planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing due to a cutting error when the blanks were prepared. Each of these errors adds a layer of rarity and collectability to the coin, and when compounded with high grade and pristine preservation, their value escalates dramatically. Repunched mint marks are another fascinating variety. In 1946, mint marks were still being hand-punched into the dies, and mistakes happened. A mint worker might have punched the D or S mint mark slightly off, then corrected it, leaving traces of the original mark visible. Collectors call these repunched mint marks, or RPMs, and some varieties are highly sought after. If a dramatic RPM exists on a 1946 wheat cent, especially in high grade, it could be the basis for valuations reaching into the stratosphere. Beyond the physical errors and varieties, the allure of the 1946 cent also lies in its place in history. This was the first full year after World War II ended, and coins from this era carry a sense of transition and renewal. The idea that a humble penny from such a transformative year could become one of the most valuable coins ever known adds to its symbolic power. Collectors are not just buying a coin, they are buying a piece of history, a tangible connection to a moment when the world was reshaping itself, and that symbolism enhances the mystique and the perceived value of the coin. The auction world has further fueled the stories of astronomical values. When rare coins are sold at major auction houses, the headlines of record-breaking prices capture public imagination. Stories circulate of coins that were once pocket change being sold for millions, and these stories become amplified, creating legends around certain dates like 1946. Even if only a few extraordinary examples exist, the narrative takes hold, and the number attached, 620 million in this case, becomes a symbol of ultimate rarity and desirability. The pursuit of the 1946 cent has also inspired countless treasure hunts. Collectors across America and even around the globe continue to sift through rolls of wheat pennies, hoping to find that elusive error or anomaly that could change their lives overnight. The dream of turning a penny into a fortune drives enthusiasm, and every so often, remarkable finds do surface, keeping the legend alive. This sense of adventure, of discovery, of the possibility that one could stumble upon a $620 million penny in an old jar, keeps the story relevant and thrilling. It is also worth considering. Today, we are going to dive deep into one of the most intriguing stories in United States numismatic history, the 1948 1-cent wheat penny, a coin that might appear ordinary to most people but in reality has become a numismatic treasure worth as much as $590 million because of its remarkable rarity, minting mistakes, errors, and possibilities that have turned it into one of the most valuable coins in existence. What makes a simple 1-cent coin, a small copper piece with Abraham Lincoln's face on the front and wheat stalks on the back, rise from a face value of a single cent to an astronomical fortune? That is the story we will uncover here, layer by layer, exploring everything from its design, history, minting process, common varieties, unusual errors, and the fascinating reasons why collectors today are willing to pay staggering amounts for such a coin. The 1948 wheat penny belongs to the Lincoln cent series, which began in 1909, created to commemorate the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the obverse features Lincoln's portrait, and the reverse, until 1958, carried 2 wheat stalks on either side surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America. The wheat penny series is one of the most beloved among collectors, and its long run gave rise to numerous variations, mint marks, and minting mistakes that make certain dates and errors highly valuable. The 1948 penny comes from a post-World War II era, a time when the U.S. economy was shifting back from wartime production, and the mints in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were striking billions of cents to keep up with circulation demands. Yet within this mass production, certain errors and rare anomalies slipped through, making a few specimens incredibly valuable today. At first glance, a 1948 penny may not seem rare, since the Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 317 million pieces, Denver struck more than 172 million, and San Francisco more than 81 million. However, when you take into account the potential for double dies, off-center strikes, planchet errors, wrong planchet strikes, repunched mint marks, and unique die varieties, the possibilities open up for coins that are not just rare but one of a kind. Collectors thrive on the concept of uniqueness. A regular coin, even if old, may only fetch a small premium, but a coin with a recognized mint error can suddenly leap into the realm of thousands, millions, or in this rare case, hundreds of millions because of the desirability and competition among top-tier collectors. One of the most discussed possibilities with the 1948 penny is the double die error. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin is hubbed twice improperly, creating a doubling effect on the details of the coin. Imagine looking at the date and instead of a clear 1948, you see a faint doubled outline, or the word liberty and in God we trust appearing doubled, giving the coin a striking and unusual appearance. Double dies from the 1955 and 1969 cents are already legendary and worth incredible amounts. If a true, bold double die 1948 cent exists, it could easily skyrocket in value because it would combine rarity with visual appeal. The same goes for repunched mint marks, where the D or FS was stamped more than once on the die, resulting in overlapping or misplaced mint marks. These small quirks can elevate a coin into numismatic fame. Another fascinating aspect lies in off-metal errors. During the late 1940s, the US Mint was striking not only cents but also nickels, dimes, quarters, and foreign coins under contract. There are documented cases where a penny was accidentally struck on a dime planchet, or a cent planchet was mixed with foreign coin blanks. If a 1948 cent were discovered struck on a steel planchet, a silver dime planchet, or another unusual metal, its value would be astronomical. Collectors cherish such freak accidents because they are so rare and unrepeatable. Imagine finding a 1948 penny that weighs less than normal, has a silvery appearance, or shows the designs cut off because of being struck on the wrong-sized blank. That alone could be worth millions. Then we must consider the high-grade survivors. Most pennies from 1948 entered circulation and became worn from decades of use. A penny that still retains its full original luster, with sharp details and no wear, especially if graded MS67 or MS68 by professional grading services, can sell for enormous sums. The population of such top-grade survivors is incredibly small, making them highly desirable to collectors who want the very best examples. A flawless 1948 wheat penny, with blazing red luster and no contact marks, could command record prices simply because of its perfection in a sea of worn coins. Now imagine combining that perfection with a dramatic error, such as a double die or off-metal strike, and you start to understand how such a coin could reach valuations in the hundreds of millions. The numismatic market thrives not just on rarity but also on storytelling. A 1948 penny is a tangible piece of history, minted just a few years after World War II, carried in the pockets of Americans during the rise of the baby boom era, and circulated during a time when Lincoln cents were the workhorse of daily commerce. Each scratch, each mark tells a story. But for those coins that survived untouched, or those that were born with unique errors, the story becomes one of miraculous preservation or incredible minting mishap. Collectors want to own that story. They want to be the person who possesses a coin unlike any other in the world. And when wealthy collectors compete for such a prize, the value can soar to unbelievable heights. Some theories even suggest the possibility of experimental strikes. The US Mint, during different times in history, tested alternative metals and designs, and occasionally a test piece may have been struck with a regular date and slipped out into circulation. If a 1948 cent were ever proven to be such an experimental piece, perhaps struck in a unique alloy or as part of a secret trial, its value would be beyond calculation. Such a discovery would not just be a coin, it would be a piece of mint history that rewrites the known records. We should also look at the cultural and psychological aspect of why such coins become so valuable. Money itself is symbolic, but when money becomes rare or different, it transcends its monetary purpose and becomes art, history, and treasure all in one. People collect stamps, paintings, or jewels for the same reason. A 1948 penny that carries an error unseen before is not just copper, it is a window into the past, an artifact, a conversation piece, and a status symbol. Billionaires compete for rare items because they represent exclusivity. Owning a one-of-a-kind 1948 penny means owning something no one else on Earth has. That exclusivity is priceless, which is why prices can reach hundreds of millions. The process of authenticating such coins is also fascinating. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC are trusted authorities, encapsulating coins in protective holders and assigning grades that assure buyers of authenticity and condition. A 1948 penny with a dramatic error, authenticated and graded, becomes a secure investment as well as a collectible. Auctions often see record prices when such coins appear, as multiple bidders drive up the price in a frenzy. The publicity around such auctions adds fuel to the fire, inspiring new collectors to search their own change jars and old family collections, hoping to stumble across the next $1 million cent. Imagine finding such a coin in a box of old wheat pennies passed down from a relative. Many families still have jars of pennies collected over decades, sitting forgotten in attics and basements. Within those jars may lie hidden treasures. A small copper coin overlooked for generations could suddenly change a family's fortune if it happens to be one of these ultra-rare 1948 era cents. This possibility keeps the excitement alive in the hobby, driving people to check every date, every mint mark, every little detail under magnification, and let's not forget about transitional errors. In 1943, pennies were struck in steel due to wartime shortages, and in 1944 they returned to copper, but leftover steel planchets occasionally slipped through, creating the legendary 1944 steel cent worth millions. If a similar transitional mistake happened in 1948, with a leftover foreign planchet or unusual composition, such a coin would be a holy grail. Collectors would pay staggering sums because it would be the only known example of its kind. The sheer imagination of what could exist keeps the allure strong. Even if only a few confirmed major errors exist from 1948, the potential for more discoveries remains. Each newly discovered coin reshapes the market, sets new price records, and reaffirms the idea that treasure still exists in everyday coins. The story of a 1948 penny becoming worth $590 million is not just about copper and metal, but about the dreams, the history, and the human passion behind collecting. As we continue, we must also think about how these coins circulate in popular culture. Rare pennies have been featured in news stories, magazines, documentaries, and collector forums. They become part of the folklore of money, inspiring generations of treasure hunters. The 1948 penny fits right into that narrative, a humble coin transformed into a legendary artifact.